Hello, my name is Leon DeHaan, and you're listening to our study in the book of Colossians. We've been talking about the family. We've been talking about actually up to this point, three of the units of the family. We've talked about wives, we've talked about husbands, we've talked about children, and now the very last unit that Paul talks about here is he talks about fathers. He talks about fathers in a way that fathers need to really sit back and understand. Now, I've told this before, and I'll say it again. My truck is a wonderful, wonderful truck that God has blessed us with, and it's got 4 tires. Now, it's also got a thing in the truck that I can hit a button and it'll tell me the air pressure in all 4 tires. I like that. I like to watch my air pressure in my truck's tires. Why? Because those tires are extremely important. If a tire is getting low, you know what? I know a couple things. I know that it's going to cut down on my gas mileage, but I know that it's not going to drive completely right. It's not going to steer completely right if there's a low tire. The same thing is true if a tire's overinflated. It's not going to steer right. Well, that's the way it is with these 4 things as far as the family is concerned. For a family to function like God intended it to function, all 4 of these things need to be in right order. It's an order. It's a way of doing things. It's something that's put together. You know, anytime something gets out of order, you know what happens? The whole thing misfunctions. You know, we've always said that, you know, as goes the family, so goes the church. And you know what? That is so true. If you've got a church of strong families, you know what you've got? You've got a strong church. But if you've got a church where families are all messed up, not functioning like they're supposed to function, you got a church that's going to be weak. It's not going to make the impact that God's got for that church. Now, today we're going to talk about fathers. Now, he's not talking here about parents. He's talking about fathers. The Greek word here is the Greek word for fathers. Do you understand? Fathers hold a very important place in the family, a place of authority. Now, we can go all the way back to Israel and to the way that God set up Abraham as the father of Israel, and how God emphasized, even way back in the Old Testament, the order of the father, and how the father is so vitally important. You see, it's the father that loves the wife. When the father loves the wife like Christ loved the church, you know what happens? The wife comes into submission. When fathers treat their children right, you know what? Things will come into right order. Now, again, I'm talking about children. I'm talking about young children. I'm not talking about 40-year-old children or 50-year-old children. When it gets to that age, to what we call the age of accountability, you know what? They begin to make their own decisions, and they are responsible for their own decisions. But when a father will treat his young children right, you know what happens? The family will function right. Now, what does the Apostle Paul say to fathers? He says, fathers, do not exasperate your children so that they will not lose heart. Fathers, don't exasperate. Now, the word here could also be treated to treat them with bitterness, to embitter them, to stimulate them, or to remove stimulation. The word exasperate is the word that the New American Standard Version translates as. And this word exasperate actually means to pull the breath out of someone. You know what? Fathers, do not pull the breath out of your children. Do you understand? I know of fathers that have been so critical of their children that their children are suffering even today, even as grown adults. They're suffering from a lack of self-esteem. You know what? This is what I believe, and this is what I believe the Bible teaches, is that fathers place self-esteem inside the children more than the wife does. Do you understand? When a father comes up to a child and says, "You've done a good job. You're a good son. You're a good daughter," there is extreme power in that he's giving them something to build their lives upon. He's not taking away. He's not exasperating them. He's not telling them, "Well, you're not any good." But he's giving them something that they can build their lives upon. So fathers, take this very, very seriously. You are the one that's responsible for building the life of your children. You're the one that's responsible to speak to your children in a way that they can have a foundation placed in their lives. Now, I'm not saying that wives aren't teachers. My wife did a wonderful job of teaching my children. You know what? I'm not saying that wives can't teach. But what I'm saying is that that husbands put that foundation inside of a child's life. The Apostle Paul, going back to the scriptures, the very last phrase here, so that they will not lose heart. You know what I see in our societies today? Not only here in America, but around the world. There's children without fathers. And because there's children without fathers, there's children without hearts. There's children that have no emotion. There's children that walk around like a bunch of zombies with nothing on the inside of them. Fathers, listen to me as we bring this session to a close. You are vitally important in the life of your child. To not come in there and to rip out their breath, but to come in and to solidify and to teach those children how good they are, to tell them how important they are, how smart they are, whatever it is, to give them what they can build their life on. Because when you do that, you know what you're doing? You're giving them a heart. You're giving them a foundation so that they can head off into life raising their heads, that can head off into life with dignity. Fathers, don't exasperate your children. And then the last phrase again, the last phrase again, so that they will not lose heart. Thank you for watching.